Today we got two insanely powerful heroes going head to head. Dr. Manhattan versus Superman Prime 1 million. Who comes out on top? Well, let's find out.
Eyes up. Stay sharp. Stay down. Final warning. I could do this all day.
Dr. John Osterman was a lowly lab technician before he was caught in a radioactive particle test. He returned as a godlike superhuman. Dr. Manhattan is powerful and is highly intelligent, yet he grew to become emotionally distant towards people. Also the only superhero of actual powers in the Watchmen storyline. Dr. Manhattan seems to have mastery over the manipulation of matter and energies around him, as well as understanding their makeup on the fundamental level. This control even extends to a complete control over his physical person, meaning that he's actually able to piece himself back together if he was ever destroyed. He's demonstrated such things as altering his size, displaying godlike strength, teleporting himself and other individuals wherever he wants. He can create copies of himself to act independently, turn intangible, and create environmental fields. Manhattan also shown the ability to manipulate matter and actually control things down to the atomic level. He's able to create crystalline structures on Mars, create water, melt tanks, turn guns into steam, bullets to mercury, and a bottle into snowflakes. Dr. Manhattan also has the ability to remove an opponent's intrinsic field and disintegrate his targets. He also has a unique perception of time, and can seemingly perceive all events that occur in his life simultaneously. Because of his unique perception of time, matter, and energy, he doesn't view humanity in the same way that we do. He might even be incapable of normal human emotions. So, as we got one corner, the mighty and mysterious Dr. Manhattan. But, enter the ring, in the corner, arguably the most powerful Superman to ever live, Superman Prime 1 million. The Superman of the entry 53rd century is actually the same Superman from post-Crisis, having survived by becoming essentially the living extension of the sun. He left the Earth somewhere in the late 21st century, when everyone he cared about died, and he went on to traverse across the entire DCU, going beyond time and space, even said to reach as far as heaven and hell themselves. Under the effects of the yellow sun, Superman Prime has all the same powers as the average Kryptonian, albeit these powers are heightened to a nearly unprecedented degree, meaning that Clark obviously has superhuman strength. And you could even argue that his strength is more a manipulation of energy fields than sheer physical strength, which is why Superman Prime can pick up such large objects rather than crumble under their own mass. He's essentially invulnerable and can take any attack that might come his way, can defy the forces of gravity and achieve flight, and he's also got the ability to move at incredible speeds, essentially by sheer force of will. Superman Prime's vision processes the entire electromagnetic spectrum. He can hear any sound at any volume or any pitch, and he also fire beams of intense heat and energy just by looking at a target. In short, Superman Prime 1 million is essentially Superman from post-Crisis after gone through a 15,000-year sun dip, increasing his powers and abilities to essentially immeasurable levels, even being able to dwarf someone like Cal Kent, who is more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, faster than a speeding tachyon, and is able to hold back a galaxy with his force vision. So who wins? Well, let's break it down. Now, these are definitely two of the most powerful and two of the most hyped up characters in the DC universe. This will be a fight that I would absolutely love to see play out in comics. But with that being said, there aren't a whole lot of feats to judge them by, especially regarding Superman Prime, and a whole lot of misinformation spread about them. So before we get into the fight breakdown, I think we need to clarify a bit of this misinformation first. So talking about Superman Prime 1 million, it's been said that he recreated Lois Lane, giving her a new powerful and godlike body. Well, this isn't true, because in the comic itself, said that fifth dimensional imp was one to use a sample of Lois Lane's DNA to recreate her alongside Superman Prime 1 million. He couldn't have done it on his own. There's a claim that he created his own universe. That mostly just comes from the fact that Superman said, "Welcome to my universe." It in no way means that he created his own universe in really any shape or form. In this scene, Superman Prime 1,000,000 was talking to Adam, who had just passed through an interdimensional bridge from a separate universe that had been destroyed. All Clark was doing was being polite, doing his parents taught him down on the Kent farm, to welcome and greet newcomers. It's also been said that Superman Prime 1,000,000 was able to bring back the planet to Krypton and resurrect all of its inhabitants. Well, that's not true either. In that scenario, Kyle Rayner, the narrator for the story, was referring to what the Justice League, or more specifically Our Man, did for Clark. And it says right there how others brought back Krypton for him. So then what about the claim that he has the reality-warping powers of a fifth-dimensional imp? The basis behind this is the fact that a far-off future descendant of Superman, Purple Superman from the 67th century, married the Queen of the Fifth Dimension, and somehow this is supposed to equate to Superman Prime 1,000,000 having the powers of fifth-dimensional imps. Well, honestly, that just makes no sense to me, because Superman Prime 1,000,000 is actually our post-crisis Superman alive in the 853rd century, having spent 15,000 years inside the sun. There's no reason to explain how Superman could get fifth-dimensional powers in retrospect because someone in the future married the Queen of the Fifth Dimension. So then what about the fact that Superman Prime 1,000,000 was so powerful that he entered the Source Wall and came back with godlike powers? Well, the comic never actually said that. It said they looked like one who had gone so far as to crash through the gates of heaven, and still not found for what she searched. And the Source Wall and the Gates of Heaven are two separate and distinct things in the DC Universe. Have never been equated or one swapped out for the other. Plus, the phrasing of he looked like one who had gone so far as to crash the gates of heaven, and the look on Superman's face really seems to describe Superman's facial expression, just more figurative language than anything else. There's the final claim they able to easily defeat the mighty Solaris, a sentient and artificial sun, which is like all the other claims we've seen here, it's not exactly true. In the battle, Solaris was fighting against the Justice Legion Alpha, Justice League, and other heroes in the 853rd century in an epic showdown. As the battle went on, Kyle Rayner was inside of Solaris, and told the League that he's got to increase the mass of Solaris, destabilizing his core, making the sun go supernova. Kyle did this, Solaris was blown up, and him and Kal Kent, Superman 1,000,000, contained the blast. So at this point, Solaris was defeated and near dead, and it was at this point that Superman Prime 1,000,000 came out of the sun with his Green Lantern ring to finish off the essentially already defeated Solaris. Don't worry, Superman Prime 1,000,000 is still incredibly powerful, nearly incalculably powerful. But we'll talk about that later. Right now, I gotta talk about some clarification for Dr. Manhattan. How powerful is Dr. Manhattan in DC Rebirth? Well, as important as that question is to this fight, it's honestly kind of difficult to answer. Or at least answer right now. Because the Doomsday Clock series, we're going to find out our answers. That series is still ongoing, so things could fundamentally change by the end of it. Especially with Dr. Manhattan's fight against Superman coming up. But with Doomsday Clock issue number 7, that's where we learn about Dr. Manhattan's interference with the DCU. Turns out, his interference actually begins all the way back in the 1940s, as Manhattan prevented events from happening in DC's Golden Age in order to form the current timeline into his own version of DC Earth. It really does appear that the current DC timeline only exists in its current form because of Dr. Manhattan's manipulations. However, this doesn't mean that Manhattan necessarily created the DC universe. Ozymandias asked Dr. Manhattan why he was here, and John said that he hoped that he would find a place among other superpowered people here, implying that DC Earth was always here and Manhattan just entered into it. So if Manhattan didn't create the DC universe, what did he do? How did he form the current timeline in his own version of Earth? Well, that's kind of simple. You see, even way back in the original Watchmen story, Manhattan had the ability to look into his own timeline, past, present, and future. It's got limits, and his vision isn't absolute, but he experiences the future at the same time as the present, so he'll know what people will say to him before they actually say it, because he already lived the future. In the Before Watchmen series, we saw that Dr. Manhattan can travel back in time to an alternate timeline, exist in two timelines simultaneously, alter the outcomes of one event, and even merge multiple timelines. In the series, Dr. Manhattan even said that he created and destroyed alternate universes. And while it's technically true, it's also technically false. You see, he didn't literally create new universes, as the physics of the DC universe just means that if you change an event, a new timeline forms. It's not creating a new universe outright. Basically, he's a time traveler along his own timeline and he's changed things, fracturing quantum reality and two realities formed, each of them perfectly valid. Then when he said that he had destroyed alternate universes, well, it's just that when he merged alternate timelines, forming them into one, and so technically, they ceased to exist. And he wasn't able to erase alternate timelines with just a wave of his hand or the blink of an eye, like some omnipotent or multiversal being. He actually had to go back and travel into the timelines, fixing every choice he made in order to get the timeline back on track in the way it was meant to be. So less like a god, more like Marty McFly and Doc hopping into the DeLorean. This is basically the same thing we've seen him do in Rebirth. He didn't actually create the New 52 universe, but just removed 10 years from the real timeline and that became the New 52. And he did this basically the same way, by changing small little things, like moving Alan Scott 6 inches to the left so he can't touch the Green Lantern, doesn't become one of the first superheroes, the Justice Society of America has never formed. Things like that. So he didn't actually warp the DC multiverse in the typical sense, but just did what we've seen him do before and creating alternate timelines. I know that's a lot, but it's really important that we establish Dr. Manhattan's power level, not just go off simple hearsay. However, all that being said, Dr. Manhattan is still undeniably powerful. I mean, Reverse Flash thought that he was staring into the face of God, and supposedly even Mr. Mix fled to the fifth dimension because he was afraid that Dr. Manhattan might come looking for him. But Superman Prime is undeniably powerful as well. Like we said, this is post-Crisis Superman who's been in the sun for 15,000 years. So that begs the question, how powerful is Superman after just an average sun dip? Well, during the Our Worlds at War storyline, in a desperate last-ditch effort to stop Brainiac 13 from altering the universe and reshaping it to an own image, Clark went to the heart of the sun for roughly 15 minutes in order to get as much energy as possible in an attempt to destroy Brainiac's war world. After Superman absorbed all the solar energy he could, he stepped out of the sun and plowed his way through the Imperiex Prime amped war world and destroyed Brainiac's 13 body with a single strike. He was also able to overpower and throw the war world into an infinitesimal frozen point in time. While Brainiac was frozen in time, Superman was able to casually move around like nothing had happened. So if that was only a few minutes in the sun, take that in around the 15,000 years. That's how much power Superman Prime Million is packing with this fight. He's been referred to before as the most powerful metahuman in the DC universe, and has definitely backed this up, as he even dwarfs people like Cal Kent, Superman 1,000,000, who's more powerful than the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, faster than a speeding tachyon. He's able to hold back a galaxy with his force vision. And since this is still post-Crisis Superman, that means we can look at his feats during post-Crisis. Most notably, he's able to stand up to matter manipulation attacks. This is definitely Dr. Manhattan's go-to offensive move, and he's got some real impressive showings come Rebirth, like even vaporizing Metron and Owlman while in the Mobius chair. Metron is a new god. While he's not necessarily known for his durability, he was able to take attacks from the Anti-Monitor, although at the same time he was injured by Grail and her Omega Blast, who's considerably less powerful, so a little bit of inconsistency there. Basically, point is, Dr. Manhattan's got a powerful molecular manipulation ability, and if Superman is able to stand up to it, then that's a massive advantage in his corner. Well, here's the thing. Clark has stood up the molecular manipulation storm of red kryptonite from Mr. Mix. That's before he went and sunned it for 15,000 years, and obviously gained a whole lot more durability in doing so. Dr. Manhattan has also shown that he's able to easily overpower other heroes, even take down the whole Justice League. But it's been said that Superman Prime 1,000,000 is the most powerful metahuman that the DC universe has ever seen. Much more powerful than anyone Dr. Manhattan has encountered on the Justice League. Basically, Superman Prime 1,000,000 is essentially endgame Superman. So in short, it's very difficult to determine who's going to win this fight. Just really hard. And in fact, it'll be a whole lot easier to decide after the Doomsday Clock storyline is over. That story's been going on for 2+ years now, it feels like, so we're making this video now. However, in Doomsday Clock, Dr. Manhattan did mention that he refused to fight Superman, because he believed that that fight would lead to his oblivion and possibly even destroy the universe. If Dr. Manhattan is that scared of normal post-crisis Superman, imagine how it'd be going up against the 15,000-year sun dip Superman, where we saw Superman increase exponentially in power after just a 15-minute sun dip, able to defeat threats who could threaten the whole universe. So as for right now, I'm going to have to give this one over to Superman Prime 1 million. Superman Prime 1 million wins. But what do y'all think? I would love to hear your thoughts, so sign off in the comments down below. Also, be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, turn on notifications, join the DanCo army, and I will see you next time.